Hello guys, this is Reza with another video. This one is about Substance plugin in Autodesk Maya. So during the installation process, you need to make sure to tick Substance plugin, and once you go through the entire installation process, you will get the menu and get a shelf for Substance plugin. It's from Algorithmic, and Algorithmic creates a folder in program files in Windows, and then through that folder you can access all the files and the hierarchy for that particular plugin. If you tick that plugin and you still don't have that, probably you can go to Windows, Setting Preferences, and Plugin Manager, and make sure to set Substance, Substance Maya, and Substance Workflow.py, and tick all three of them to auto load and load it. With that, you get Substance Shelf and Substance Dropdown. Now, that's a very simplified version of what you get with the actual Substance Painter application. If you don't have the software, or if you kind of don't know how to work with that, that can be an interesting alternative, although it's not as thorough and it doesn't give you as much control. I think as beginners it would be a good starting point for you guys to get to know Substance, how the Substance workflow works, and how to use Substance textures and to plug them into renderer nodes. For our case, it's Arnold renderer, and it's actually very informative the way that Substance plugin works inside Maya. So let's take a peek at that. I've got a scene ready here. Some of these materials I've gone ahead and textured them, but the fabric here, the an Art Deco, like a statue thing here, and I've got the bedside table, if you can call it that, a mini drawer in here. So these are all untextured, and I'm planning on texturing them with Substance plugin. Hopefully by the end of it you have enough to get the ball rolling and texture some of your assets with Substance plugin in Maya. So first things first, I'm gonna go to Substance and Settings. Let's take a peek at that first, and then we can start with Hypershade. The first tab is Default Resolution, set to 512 with lock resolution, meaning that if you switch to 1024, Maya is going to update height attribute to 1024 as well, so you don't need to worry about that, which is power of 2, makes it a lot easier for Maya to calculate, and it's a bit of a memory saving if you're low on RAM. 512 is definitely a very low value. I would start with 2048, or if you have a decent workstation, 4096 4K resolution would be really good, and you get a lot of details out of your procedural textures. 8K still in beta mode, and a bit of an overkill for what we do here, so we may stay with 2, maybe bump it up to 4 if need be. But don't worry about it. Even if you leave it at 512, the good news is because the material will get generated procedurally, then you probably don't need to worry about it. Now you can always upgrade it at any point of time. Next, rendering workflow. We use Arnold, so I'll leave it at Arnold. Substance engine, you can choose either GPU or CPU. I do have Quadro K5000 with Tesla C2075, and this guy is just doing computing tasks, so I can definitely use GPU. If you can use GPU, if you've got a decent a graphic card, then definitely use GPU. It would be much faster. If you don't have it, CPU works just fine. And last but not least, of course, you need to make sure to set projects to begin with. Hopefully you know that, and once that's done, Substance is going to save all of the textures and all the maps, either high dynamic or low dynamic, into that folder. Cache to disk should be always ticked, and file type for low dynamic range should be PNG. TGA works just fine. TIFF, probably for low dynamic range, again is a bit of an overkill. If you set project, then you have nothing to worry about. Default cache location is going to be Maya project folder, and Algorithmic is going to create a Substance folder inside your Maya project folder, and that's where you'll find all of your maps. With that one out of the way, I make sure that if I go to Windows, shape picking should be enabled, so I can actually click and select my models via render view. For now, I'm going to turn off progressive refinement and run IPR. I don't want to click, and I don't want the render to kick off. The second pane, I'm going to panel and switch to Hypershade. I'm going to select what I want to be a wood material, and from here I'm ready to work. Now you have two ways of doing this. One is to go through the browser, can be found here. You can find it here, open sample, or you can actually type Substance and you can go Substance texture to bring a texture. But if you bring Substance texture that way, it's empty, whereas if you navigate to Substance browser, then you have few options to work with. You don't need to plug anything, it's already been connected. So I'm just going to go with that rotten wood material from Substance, drag and drop it in here. By the way, if there's a material that you really like, you can always right click on it and add it to your favorite, and you can always find it here. If you have your own SPSAR, which is a Substance material, you can bring it to this path too. You can have custom folders, and you can connect yourself to Substance source and have an enormous or a good decent number of materials ready. I think Autodesk provides you with around 22. That might change in the future, but for now I think I have around 22 materials to work with. Now this one is wood, rotten wood, and this is the core of the material, the Substance node. With that, I have a 2D place texture node, and that is in charge of repeating my UVs, rotating my UVs if need be. You can mirror it horizontally or vertically if needed. Very similar to what you get with file Maya node, if you remember that. So I'm going to click on Substance. In the attribute editor, I'll be getting the path. So it's always good to check the path, especially when you want to add to your archive or add to your library. You know where to access them. If you change that, you can reload that. You get a graph info with information. Really didn't find it useful. And then resolution with lock ratio, which you can change in the future. I suggest that you start with 512 because that gives you speed, and once you move forward and refine your textures, last step would be to up-res your texture resolution. Next, Substance output. This is a procedural node and not quite understandable by renderers. It doesn't matter what renderer you use. It can be Arnold, it can be Redshift, it can be RenderMan, V-Ray. They don't understand what Substance node is, so you have to convert them into images, or for lack of a better word, bake outputs. So you can do that through caching. So you need to make sure that cache output to disk is always ticked. cache folder location. Hopefully you set project, and if you do, then Maya is going to look into your project. You can have custom paths as well if you don't want to bake anything into your project folder. For low dynamic range, which is probably your color map, PNG or TIFF or Targa, and for normal and especially displacement map, you need high dynamic range. Best one is EXR, and that's what Maya offers. Then you go to workflow. Of course, render, we still stay with Arnold because that's what we use, but the workflow is pretty much the same with other renderers. And Maya says, well, I've got a long list of outputs. You can select them manually and create them, or go ahead and create shader network. Click on that and I will provide everything from A to Z for you. Very, very convenient. And you can have that, and once that's done, you can go and manually turn on and turn off outputs that you want or you don't want. So let's go with that. Actually, let's since everything else is pretty much set, I'm gonna go, and with that node selected, I'm just gonna go and create shader network. Maya thinks, and holy moly, you can see the entire node tree is ready to go. Now you may look at this and you're like, come on, it's a bit difficult to see which one is which, but it's actually very straightforward. If I go and rearrange and start from the top, this is 2D placement node, we know that. And this is the brain or the procedural central substance node, and from that we have base color, we have ambient occlusion, we have normal, and this may change. You can actually have a look at that: base color, roughness, metallic, height map, which is our bump map. And if you would like to have a look at them, you can actually click on find output and you find them here. But that's not it. If you look at this guy, this is still a procedural substance node, but what substance does, it actually connects it to what we understand as a good old file, a Maya node. You can see that the image name texture box is yellow. This means that you cannot edit that. It's already been connected to Rottenwood underscore base color. Nicely named. Good job. Thank you. So you don't need to do anything. It's already been sorted. Now, if you would like to change a few things, you don't change it here. You're not supposed to change it here. You can access the image here, but if you would like to change something, you have to backpedal and look at this node. You make a change to this node, Maya will upgrade your file node. That's pretty much how it works. Same thing with something like ambient occlusion. It's connected to ambient occlusion file node, again with an EXR because it's a high dynamic range. Multiply, divide node to add a little bit of depth, and that goes into base color in a layered fashion. Same thing with normal, and you can use Substance uses the appropriate pattern, and that will be extracted from the color map. Again, you don't need to do anything. That goes into a bump 2D node, or it can be AI normal. In this case, it really doesn't matter, and that goes into that normal camera. So looks like everything is all set. I'm just gonna call that it's just old habit of mine, AI wood substance. Kind of rename everything. So I'm gonna select the model, then right click, assign to the material. Now I don't need to spend too much time rendering the entire thing, so all I'm going to do is just render this bit only. Now as soon as you do that, voila, you get your wood. Looks fantastic. We didn't do much, did we? Now, this is not exactly what I want, but it's a good starting point. Remember, if you want to change something, if I look at my Arnold node now, we've got something plugged to color, to metalness. Metalness is pretty much black. Roughness, which is a really good valuable map that I have. And if I go to geometry, I've got bump map. My normal map is connected to that. And we've got two procedural node connected to multiply divide node as well. Again, don't need to worry about that. And I've got two files that is connected. One is roughness and the other one is metallic, which is black, connected to my AI standard. Now if I backpedal, go in here, that's where I make those changes. Let's say I want to make changes to my base color. All I need to do is just to click on that magnifier icon. It brings the file. I can actually go press F. It frames it for me. But to make changes, I still make changes here. Now, time to scroll down, I guess. What's cool about this is this. You get some presets for some of these materials, and you get some parameters that you can actually tweak the result even further and get some pleasing results. Now, for example, I would like to go with wood orange, and I say, can you please apply that? And once you apply that, if I re-render, I will get a completely different result with a little bit of decay on the wood, something that I want actually. Now I need the color to be slightly brighter, so I get more orangey type of look to the wood fibers. That's exactly what I want. It's a bit warmer. Now I think it's good. You can actually up the intensity of the normals. You can increase or intensify the height map if you want. But so far I think we're in a good place. I go ahead and up the resolution to 496. Now Maya is gonna recalculate all of those maps. 16 maps to be specific. Some of them are high dynamic, so it might take time, few minutes, based on the computer spec. It's not really that time consuming. Now that's done, time to re-render. Now as you can see, Maya goes through another round of calculation. If I just close the render and zoom in, you can see the amount of detail that is available on this model. All these dents and wood chips, very, very cool. And I did close to nothing. Now, next on the list is this cloth. I'm gonna pretty much do the same thing. I'm gonna clear my work area, or I can create another graph to keep the old one. Doesn't really matter. I'm gonna go to substance, gonna go open samples, and from here I'm going to bring that fabric jeans. I know it sounds really odd to use jeans for that cloth table, but that's fine. We're gonna do exactly the same. So cache output to disk is enabled. I don't need to do anything else for now. I'm just gonna go ahead and create shader network. That's done. I'm going to rearrange, select Arnold node, AI standard, and I'm gonna call this AI cloth. Make sure my model is selected, right click on it, assign. Fantastic. Now if I render right now, what I'll be getting would be pretty much jeans, denim like jeans. That's probably not what I want. So I'm just gonna stop the render. I'm going to the main material, and in here I'm going to change that to something like this. That should do the trick. I'm gonna add a little bit of warmth to it. Sounds about right. The rest I'll leave it as is and do a sample render to see what I'm getting. Now hit render. Not too bad. I actually like the graininess and all the pores and noise on it. So this is something that I want. It's a bit low res, so I'm just going to up the res to something like 2048. Again, Maya is going to calculate 21 maps. Once that's done, I can re-render. I'm actually going to create a snapshot of this so I can do it for comparison. And that was quick. So if I have another snapshot, set this one as A and the other one as B, you can now see the difference. Now look at 2K map versus 500 pixels. Huge change. So a lot of blurriness, a lot of detail, and again you get even more once you upgrade to 4K, which in this case is really not that necessary. So I would call this one done as well. Let's get to this little guy here, and what I'm thinking is like stain type of copper type of material for it. Let's see what we can find in the substance samples. So again, I'm gonna clear all the graphs. I'm going to open samples, and let's see. I'm going to switch to list so I can see clearly. And there's one material in here. I probably can use that. Just gonna bring, drag and drop, and this time I want you to just do it without looking at the monitor. I'm pretty sure you're confident on how to do it by now. So I can close that, select the substance node, create shader network out of it. First things first, I'm just going to rename it AI Metal. Yeah, that should do it. And I'm going to select the model and right click, assign a new material, and I'm going to disable region rendering, not needed anymore. Now let's go back to the main metal node and let's see what we can find. There must be some presets. By the way, you can create your own presets. If there is no preset, you can create one preset as default and then alter the result or the parameters and save it as your own version, so you can kind of toggle back and forth. There is copper here, so I'm going to apply that, and let's do another quick render and see what we can get. Oh, as you can see, that looks really good. I really don't need to change it because that kind of goes well with the warm tone that I have for the leaves, the cloth, and the wood texture. And HDRI is kind of warm enough to give me the vibe I need. So you know, you can kind of investigate what each attribute does really. For example, a hue shift changes the color, contrast changes the contrast. Some of these are very self-explanatory. Metallic is going to you can just turn off the metallic, but that kind of defeats the purpose of having copper. If you need more roughness, then increase roughness, so on and so forth. So increase decay, increase colors, and you can actually randomize it. There's so many things that you can do per attribute, and again, the power of this is you can actually bring materials from substance source and try it here, which gives you endless opportunities. So I hope you really enjoyed this brief tutorial. Give it a try, apply a few materials to your object and have fun with it. It's just really quick and dirty way of doing texturing, but what you get is quite extraordinary considering the time that you spent. So hope you enjoy this tutorial, and see you in the next lesson. Bye.